Morning. I'm Brad Spires, your 2021 Nevada Realtors President. Welcome to the conference. As we're getting started, really like to welcome you, and we've got some great sponsors this year, four major sponsors, and of those, the first two that I'd like to introduce are Century Lock and Realtor.com. Please take the time to review their website below.
Buyers and sellers depend on trusted real estate professionals to guide them through one of the most complex and important decisions of their lives. What if there was a solution from a trusted industry leader that enabled incredible customer experience, winning more business, and simplifying the buying and selling process? Century Lock is all that and more. We provide lockbox, showing service, and experience management solutions for real estate associations, MLSs, brokers, and agents. The first and only combined system in the real estate industry. Century Lock is the official lockbox solution of the National Association of Realtors. We put the power of access at your fingertips. Agents can open lockboxes, view property details, and review their schedule. As an industry leader known for lockbox innovation, Century Lock set the standard for secure access, durability, and battery life. We are the first to introduce one-day codes and flex codes, allowing temporary access to properties. Our mobile app provides unprecedented convenience, ease of use, and fast access. We didn't stop there. The Century Key showing service helps realtors excel with showing management, client communication, and property access, all in a single app. Stay organized, find the perfect property, schedule showings, build a daily itinerary, review property listing details, open lockboxes, view showing instructions, review client feedback, and more. Experience Sam, our AI-based virtual assistant. Sam makes your job easy by automating tedious tasks like rescheduling showings. Century Lock, the trusted solution for real estate professionals. Spend more time selling, delivering great experiences to buyers and sellers.
I'm a first-time home buyer, and I'm using Realtor.com.
All you gotta do is go to Realtor.com or download the app.
We knew that we had to find a house to fit our growing family.
I needed a home office.
And I needed us to not have a roommate anymore.
The 3D tours are awesome.
We could see a place without actually going there.
And real-time alerts made sure I never missed out on the listing.
As soon as a house came on the market, I would say, honey, the house is up.
We could not have found this home without Realtor.com.
Go get the box, Keanu.
Good morning again. Brad Spires, your 2021 Nevada Realtors President. Welcome to the virtual conference. We'll be starting right at 9 o'clock. I'd like to thank two more of our major sponsors, Fidelity National Home Warranty and Nevada Rural Housing. Please take the time to visit their websites as noted below.
I'm Mark O'Brien with the RX Abuse Leadership Initiative, or RALLY. While it's still too early to determine the full impact of COVID-19 on the addiction crisis, some trends are emerging. Around the country, individuals, families, and communities are being increasingly challenged by substance misuse and addiction. We are losing far too many Americans to overdoses. As we continue working to stay safe during the COVID-19 pandemic, it's important to remember that this is an especially difficult time for anyone struggling with addiction or in recovery. RALLY convenes national, state, and community leaders to exchange best practices and provide resources that help prevent misuse of prescription medicines. We're proud to call the Nevada Realtors a partner in these efforts. Organizations across the state are coming together to share solutions that work and making important progress against the opioid crisis. Safe disposal is essential for prevention of substance misuse, It's an easy step we can all take, and it all starts in our home. We need to commit to safely storing prescription medications and safely disposing of unused medicines when they're no longer needed. You can do your part today by taking just a few minutes to clean out your home medicine cabinets and finding a nearby safe disposal location. These 2 simple steps can prevent misuse and addiction and help save lives. To learn more, visit rallynv.org. That's RALINV.org. Thank you, Nevada Realtors, for always protecting Nevada communities by helping to address the opioid crisis from home.
We recently had a client who was looking to purchase a house, but they did not have all the funds to complete, the sale. They were thinking about waiting since they wanted to save more money. But we told them that if they were to save another $10,000, the way the market is going, perhaps now the prices were going to be much higher. So if they save $10,000, probably the house will be $20,000, $30,000 more. So by getting Home at Last down payment assistance program, that was perfect for them. They were able to buy the house, move in, and still save long-term money in the purchase price. So this is a great program that has allowed us to help a lot of families to achieve the dream of home ownership. My name is Juan Segura with Coldwell Banker Select, and I love and recommend Home at Last program to everyone. Let's get you Home at Last.
Good morning. I'm Brad Spires, your 2021 Nevada Realtors President. Welcome to our virtual conference. Got a great program set up for you today. Really look forward to having you. I picked the theme of no reason this can't be fun, anticipating that we'd be having fun in person, but not having fun in person. I've got one of my good buddies lined up that's going to be emceeing and taking us through, and we'll do intros for him later. But first, how about a little word from our CEO, Teresa McKee?
Good morning, Nevada Realtors. I just wanted to personally thank you for joining us today at the State Conference. The State Conference is one of the many member benefits available to you as a Nevada Realtor member. Many of you are familiar with the Legal Information Line, which provides you with a free resource of a direct contact with an attorney to help answer your legal questions. Don't forget also to check out the NVR website for additional legal resources, such as articles and videos. Another really important member resource that we provide is Advocacy. Did you know that Nevada Realtors, through its partner Career Nevada, monitors all politics across the state at all levels? You are represented at the state legislature, the Real Estate Commission, county commission meetings, city council meetings, and so much more. You'll hear more about both of these important member benefits throughout the conference. But as always, please feel free to contact me with any questions you have. Teresa at nvrealtors.org.
We getting an intro here, or are we ready to go?
Ready to go.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Steve, you hear me okay?
I can.
Good. Guys, welcome to our second annual virtual conference, which I hope is our last. The plan was for this to be a no reason this can't be fun up at the Hyatt, but being things still happening the way they are, we determined that virtual was the way to go. So we're still going to do our best to make it fun. I'd like to thank my conference committee, Lisa Weldeck, Vice Chair. Great job in planning. We've got some terrific folks today. So rather than you listen to me bore you, I reached out to a over 40-year friend who has an incredible resume in the business of comedy. He's been at the Evening at the Improv. He's been on Showtime. He's written for Jay Leno on The Tonight Show. And most recently, you can see him on the new Dry Bar Comedy channel. I know there's a lot of ways that he could rather spend his birthday than today, but it's an absolute pleasure to have my good friend and fabulous comedian, Steve Bruner, with us today, who will be our MC. Steve, I'll get off the stage and it's all yours.
Oh, well, thank you, Brad. Appreciate it, everybody. That's Brad Spires, and that's right. It's comedian MC Steve Bruner here. And first of all, I hope everyone found parking. That's pretty good, because I'd like to welcome all the attendees and everyone who joined us virtually. The best part of a virtual event has to be the commute. That's all I'm saying. I know one thing when it comes to virtual. You can't be late. It's hard for somebody like me to be late. And I've done 72 virtual events in the past year. And each one, I left the back of the house early. I wanted to avoid the high traffic hallway area. And today I got here very early. I was able to take a detour. I went sightseeing in the kitchen. I got some souvenirs. It's a good morning so far, I'm telling you. And we appreciate all of you showing up. Our goal is to have some fun today and tomorrow, bring you valuable content that'll help you become maybe a better person, but definitely a better realtor. And a couple of reminders before we bring on our first wonderful speaker. At the end of the session, you'll return to the event lobby, click on the next session, where each time we'll be drawing great door prizes, and click on the win points at the top of your screen to check on the number of points you've earned through gamification. And I did not make that word up. It's part of the script we worked on. And okay, we have a lot to do, so let's get to it. Our first fabulous speaker is the only person to be named a point of light by two presidents, both Mr. Bush and Mr. Clinton. Having received her BA from Harvard and her MBA from Yale, she joined early in the conception of a company called Fearless Positivity, who expertly finds ways to bring the science of happiness to life. She further is bringing her passion and research in partnership with Google, maybe you've heard of them, and to determine how to make positive psychological strategies stick and create good, sustainable change in the world. At the beginning of next session, we'll be drawing for copies of her book, The Future of Happiness. And now it's my pleasure to invite fun and happiness into this event by welcoming and introducing our first speaker, Amy Blankson.
Thank you so much, Steve. I am thrilled and honored to be here. Thank you, Brad, for making it possible for me to join you. And hello to the Nevada Realtors. I am so excited to be here. And I, of course, wish I could be there with you in person, but there is no reason we can't have fun. I get the privilege of talking to you about a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and that is fearless positivity. And certainly, I think that we could all benefit from some fearless positivity in our lives right now. And with that, I am excited to share with you my screen here as we're talking about looking ahead towards the fall with the sense of what it means to live with fearless positivity, and particularly, what does this mean for you in your business? What does this mean for you in your personal life, your family, in the midst of the incredible uncertainty that we have all been living through for the past 18 months? This image for me feels all too true, is that we keep trudging forward into the great unknown because, well, where else is there to go? So we have to keep moving. But on the other side is so many things that we are currently trying to figure out. And at that time, it can feel very stressful. My job here today is to give you some actionable tools that you can take into your business and your personal life to help you not only to deal with that stress, but to overcome it and to be a thought leader among your peers. Because sometimes what we fall into the habit of doing is thinking, oh, I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when the pandemic is over. I'll be happy when school is back in session. I'll be happy when, I get my schedule back, or when the business gets a little bit quieter. I know that the real estate market has been hot this summer. And as we're going through each of these goalposts for happiness, what happens from a positive psychology perspective, which is my background, it's in the field of positive psychology. We often talk about this as pushing happiness over the cognitive horizon, meaning that every time you approach that goalpost for happiness, your brain immediately moves on to the next goalpost. You close a house, well, what house will I close next? What property will come next? What client do I call next? And so each time we push happiness further and further out. And our brain never gets to that feeling that we so desperately crave, which is just feeling that sense of happiness in the present and really a sense of fulfillment. And I think this topic is so important right here, right now, because we're at this unique inflection point in history. We can feel it with the changing of the seasons. We can feel it with the changing in the pandemic. We know that we have a chance to change, but what will we do in this time and this opportunity? I think about this in terms of a trip I took in 2019 before any of the pandemic had started. I had gone to Sedona, Arizona with my family, and we actually came upon this actual tree. I literally stumbled over it. And when I looked up and realized how beautiful it was, I snapped a photo. And there's a number of reasons why I love this picture, but one of them is that this hike was to a specific area in Sedona called a vortex. And for those of you who aren't familiar with vortices, a vortex is a place in the earth where there is a strong magnetic pull underground, and it leaves the trees and shrubbery all kind of twisted and mangled in this beautiful pattern. But I feel like this snapshot is an image of what we've all been living through for the last 18 months. So much of our world has been sort of dredged up, twisted, mangled. It looks different. But in that moment, not only is there a beauty, but there's also a choice. And that choice you see here at the two branches of the tree. You see the branch that is following gravity. It's doing what's expected. And then you see the branch rising up above, defying gravity, as they would say in the musical Wicked. And it is thriving in the midst of what would seem like the most unlikeliest of circumstances. And we'll talk today about a few individuals who do a really good job of rising above that sense of gravity and choosing a different path, and what it is that they do that you can begin to emulate in your own life to kind of create that kind of difference. So today, I'm going to give you 4 specific tools for how you can embrace and lead with fearless positivity. So we're going to talk about your vision and your mindset, your habits, and lastly, your community. So important. So first, your vision. What can you do with your vision? And specifically, I'm going to look at the next 3 months. Now, typically, we look at big goal setting in January, New Year's resolutions, but we have a really unique opportunity here on September 30th before the 4th quarter to set some goals for the end of this year. So really micro goals, thinking about the next 3 months. I want you, if you have a scratch sheet of paper, I have a couple activities I would love for you just to be able to take some notes on. I think you'll get the most out of it if you are able to reflect alongside of me here. So if you take out that scratch sheet of paper, I want you to think about 3 specific, measurable, actionable goals that you can do in the next 3 months. Maybe you want to learn a new instrument, or you want to pick up a new hobby, you want to start exercising, you want to do something fun with your friends that you haven't seen in a long time. You want to close a certain number of clients. So it can be professional or personal goals. And I want you to write them down. And as you're doing so, I want you to think about why these goals are important to you. What is it about these goals that makes you care about them? Is it that you want more fun in your life, or you want more connection, or maybe you want more professional success or more financial freedom? Whatever it is, I want you to find why these goals are important to you. And as we're doing so, really part of creating our sense of vision is not only understanding what our goals are and beginning to think about why they're important, but let's go back here for a second. I want you to look at these goals, and I want you to think about what would your life look like if you were to live this fall with a sense of fearless positivity. That's exactly the kind of question I asked myself at the beginning of 2020. I actually renamed my company Fearless Positivity in the fall of 2019, of course, not knowing what 2020 was going to bring. But I remember on January 1st of 2020 setting these goals and actually feeling pretty bored by my own goals. They were the same goals I'd had for the last 20 years. They were, I want to be more, I want to do more, I want to get in better shape, I want to try harder. And they just seemed a little lackluster, a little lacking creativity. But then I challenged myself and I said, okay, what if I were to live this year with a sense of fearless positivity? All of a sudden, my goals became transformed. I didn't just want to get in better shape. I wanted to get in the best shape of my life. Well, I didn't know that 2020 was coming. I didn't know about all the challenges I would face or the upheaval of my schedule. And did I get in the best shape of my life? Okay, let's just say no. But do I ever regret having set that goal? No way. These goals, sometimes we hold ourselves back from our full potential because we think, oh, it's just not realistic, or, now's not the right time, or, that'd be great for someday, but I don't know about right now. And so we hold ourselves back. But I want you to lean in with me for a minute here today as we're dreaming and thinking about living with fearless positivity, about what you can do to rewrite the goals you just wrote down and rewrite in a sense of fearless positivity. How do your goals change? What would you tweak in there? So as we do that, let's hold that in space for a second. We're going to think about your vision and move into your mindset. How does your mindset play into the way that you think about the world with fearless positivity? And what does that even mean? When I think about that term, I started envisioning the individuals who I thought lived with the most sense of fearless positivity. And these individuals were some of the obvious suspects who come to mind: Malala, Martin Luther King Jr., Sally Ride, Mother Teresa. There's so many other individuals who probably come to mind for you. But what's interesting when you look at these individuals is that every single one of them had enormous amounts of fear. They had plenty to fear. They had more than the average person to fear, but they chose to fear less because of something else that mattered more. So I want to ask you, what is it for you that helped you to rise above your fear? What is it? What are your fears? And what are the things that help you to overcome them? I thought about, in particular, a young girl in my neighborhood who was facing childhood leukemia. And her mother chose to rise above the fear about the uncertainty of her path of gaining this diagnosis in the midst of a health pandemic to be one of the most positive individuals I know. Why did she do it? Number one, she did it for her daughter. And secondarily, she did it for the community who was also processing this information. But eventually, the way that she framed what was happening for the community shaped their response to the daughter. And so that sense of fearlessness was not a lack of fear. It was the ability to fear less for something else that mattered more. You see, the ancient Greeks often talked about optimism long, long ago, and in terms of optimism being the belief that your behavior matters. The belief that your behavior matters. And what amazes me about this definition is not only how long it's lasted and how true it is, but also the fact that when you have an optimistic mindset, it changes that fulcrum point on a seesaw or lever. And when you have social support, which we'll talk about a little bit more later, when you have social support on the other end, it can help you reach higher heights than you would have ever been able to reach alone and by yourself. That is the true beauty of optimism in this moment. And I want to share with you a video that for me encapsulates the true spirit of fearless positivity for those of us who are just average individuals who are trying to face the future with a sense of fearless positivity. So let me show you this video.
آفرین. آفرین برو. میتونی ها؟ فقط آفرین باش. باشه؟ اوکی؟ برو.
I love this video. I love seeing that moment, and I've seen it hundreds of times now. I love seeing that moment where the little girl sets her mindset, and you know before she even jumps that she's going to be successful. That for me is what a fearlessly positive mindset is all about. It's the belief that your behavior matters. She has practiced so much that I swear her little toddler thighs are infinitely better than mine. I don't know if you noticed that, but they are incredibly strong. She has practiced, she has set her focus, and she accomplishes her goal. And I also love the role of the male figure here. I don't know if it's a father or a coach. I don't have any idea what he's saying. But what I do know is that sometimes we have that individual behind us. Sometimes that individual is the person who's like a cheerleader. Sometimes they're our encourager. They might be a mentor. And sometimes that person has to come from deep within us. They're that positive voice that says, you know, it's tempting to give up now, but you should keep going. You can do this. And so within each one of us, that role of social support becomes so important. So sometimes when I start talking about happiness and optimism, I want to clarify definitions because there's a lot of misconceptions about what we're talking about with optimism. So when I'm talking about optimism, of course, we all hear about the cup half full and half empty. But there's a couple other takes on this. Like I love Leonardo DiCaprio's, if you see your glass is half empty, then you need to pour it into a smaller glass and stop whining. Or of course, from The Matrix, what if I told you there is no glass? Thank you, Morpheus. Or this poor cat who saw the cup as half full, but the pessimistic side of him realized it was the wrong half of the glass that he reached into. But when we're really talking about optimism, all joking aside, I want to talk about rational optimism in your life. Not rose-colored glasses, but really seeing the world with a lens of realism, seeing the positive and the negative, seeing the good, the bad, the ugly, and then choosing to give a priority to the positive information in our life, knowing that that's what moves us forward. What fearless positivity is not is the absence of fear. We know that fear exists, and sometimes we know that fear plays a really important role in keeping us not only sane, but also keeping us optimizing our capabilities, right? So when Simone Biles said that she was going to pull out of the Olympics, it was a good thing, right? It was a place where she recognized her limitations as a human being, and she made a choice that was in favor of her self-care. That is fantastic. And when I talk about fearless positivity, we're not just taking risks just for the sake of taking risks, like swimming with sharks just for the sake of it. We're actually talking about taking risks because of something else really important to us, to our value system and who we want to be. Now, I come at this from the field of positive psychology, and I love sharing this with audiences because a lot of times the research of the field of positive psychology stays in the ivory tower in academia, and it takes like 20 years to get to the public in terms of ways that we can actionably use information. But one of the research studies that was most transformative for me in my growth as a positive psychology researcher was the work looking at the baselines for happiness and the emergence of the field for positive psychology. So when the field of psychology traditionally deals with an individual who falls below what's called your baseline for happiness, that's kind of your average happiness levels. And the truth is that each and every one of us have a different baseline. Some people are genetically born happier than other people, which shocked me. And some people, of course, have life experiences that make it harder for them to rise above their baseline for happiness. And that's where psychology steps in. You fall below your baseline, you might be considered depressed. You might go to a counselor who gives you medication or therapy, a combination of both, and that brings you back up to average. So if you were to say, Amy, how many Advil should the average person take? I would say, well, the average person should probably take 2 Advil. That's what the science says. We tend towards the average. But what the field of positive psychology began to say is, who are those individuals who rise above the baseline for happiness? Those stars at the very top of the chart who tend to be positive outliers, who not just are happier today, but they're able to sustain that positivity for a long time. Let's study them. Let's figure out what they do so we can emulate it in our own lives and boost our happiness baselines to a higher plane for average, which I love. That's the science of emerging potential. And when we're doing so, I think some of the research coming out is so exciting. Now, I know that brain physiology may not be your favorite cup of tea, but this one chart, this one picture I'm sharing with you here is one of the most exciting pictures I ever get to show. And it is a picture of an individual who has gone through an MRI just before and after meditating. So they've gone through a practice of practicing meditation for 21 days, and this is the result afterwards. And what is happening here over the course of these MRI scans is that they discovered that individuals who meditate are able to increase the gray matter in their brains, which once was thought to be completely unchangeable. Now you're like, Amy, why are you so excited about this? Well, let me share with you that what's happening here is that we thought our capacity, our intelligence was limited at birth. It's what's called a fixed mindset. And we were always told, oh, this individual has an IQ of so-and-so, or such and such, or this person's good at math, or this person's good at reading. We were static judgment calls about our capacity. And what we're now realizing is that there are positive habits we can practice that can change our intelligence, that can literally change the neurophysiology and the structure of our brain to make us be not only smarter, but also happier in the long run, which is phenomenal. So we found in the field that a positive mindset is the single greatest competitive advantage in the modern economy, which in the field of real estate is an important skill. We find that individuals who are positive have 37% higher sales, 3 times more creativity, 31% more productivity. They're 40% more likely to receive a promotion. They have 23% less stress, which would be amazing, right? I want that one. 10 times higher levels of engagement, 39% more likely to live to the age of 94. And they have 50% lower chance of heart disease. Wow, right? I want all of these things. And if the research is showing us that a positive brain is linked with all of these outcomes, and there were so many other stats that I could have pulled to support this, then the question is, why aren't we always positive? Right? Why don't we live with fearless positivity on a daily basis if we know it's good for us? And I think sometimes we fall into the trap of thinking, okay, well, I've been there, I've done that, I tried it, it didn't work, and so you got burned. And so the next time around when you face a similar situation, you tend to hold yourself back. You temper your expectations, you dampen your happiness or your enthusiasm for what might be coming in the future as a self-protection mechanism, as though that actually changes the outcome, right? Which we know it doesn't. Sometimes we also think, well, what if I'm too positive and I'm seen as kind of a Pollyanna character? I'm not taken seriously enough. Or maybe I'm not being seen as being cautious enough. I haven't thought through all the risks, and people will think, wow, she's not strategic, or she's not, good at negotiating the details. What if I'm perceived as being obnoxious, like Tigger from Winnie and the Pooh, who is so enthusiastic that it can actually turn people off? Or what if I'm just not feeling optimism right now, which is okay too? And I think we go through all these range of emotions at different times, but the truth is that roughly 1/3 of individuals are optimistic and expressive of their optimism. 1/3 are what are called closet optimists, meaning that they have a mindset of positivity, but they're not expressive of it. And so they don't get all the benefits. And then 1/3 of individuals are what we would traditionally call pessimists because they are struggling with dealing with optimism. But when I talk about this, a lot of times people say, you know, what's the difference between positivity and toxic positivity or toxic optimism? I think the difference is a sense of empathy. It's a real authenticity and connection around why we're being optimistic and what it's rooted in. Because if you're faced with the question of what is the opposite of optimism, it's not pessimism, it's despair. And so I lean into optimism because the alternative is not something I'm okay with. Giving up and being despairing or creating despair is not something that I want to leave as my legacy in the world. What I want is that sense of optimism. And so I trudge forward knowing that I don't have all the answers, that there are a lot of questions and there are a lot of risks, but I do so because it matters. So as we're building up a sense of mental toughness to deal with the world around us when we know there's difficult and hard things happening, one of the questions I want to ask you is, how do you handle stress? Do you see stress as a challenge, or do you see it as a threat? And so I want to actually put up a live poll for you. Let's see if I can start this one up here. All right. So I am sending out a live poll now, and I know that for our giveaway today, that if you respond to the live poll, you earn 25 points towards getting some giveaways, among which my books are a couple of them. So I hope that you will join me in responding to this poll, and it takes just a little bit of time to get some of the results in. So I'm curious, how many of you see stress as a threat or as a challenge? Let me give it just a couple more minutes, because right now I see 100% of people see it as a challenge, and I know that there's some of you out there who might feel differently. So we'll let you pop into your live poll there and respond. And I'll give it, okay, there we go. Now we're getting closer to 50-50. Perfect. I'm going to keep going on, and I'll tell you why this question matters as some of you are able to join me in the poll here. But as we go through thinking about stress, I think one of the most helpful ways to process stress is to think about some of the things that we've been through in the past that were stressful. So for me, one of the most stressful times of my life was actually when my husband was just getting out of medical school. He got his first duty station in the military where he was going to do his residency. And I was a brand new military wife. I had no idea what to expect. And so when my husband was given the opportunity to rank order the top 20 places that he might want to live in for the next 3 to 4 years, my eyes started to get stars in them. I was thinking Hawaii, Italy, Germany, South Korea. I would do California. You know, there were all these places that I was more than happy to have an adventure. But never in my wildest imagination did I expect to get sent to one of the places not on my top 20 list, not even on my top 1,000 list. It was to Biloxi, Mississippi. And I remember my mom always said, Amy, you need to bloom where you're planted. And so I tried my best. I remember we packed up this little yellow truck with all of our worldly belongings, and we bought our very first home out in the rural community outside of Biloxi, which turned out to be highly affordable out there. We even got a cute little puppy, and I actually fell in love with the community. We found wonderful neighbors. We found just a real beauty in the spirit of the community. I was loving it. And we had been there for all of 3 months when Hurricane Katrina happened. And in the span of just 3 days, I lost my puppy, I lost my house, I lost my community. I was separated from my husband for 1.5 years as the military tried to figure out what to do with them and how to rebuild the community and what was going to happen next. And all of a sudden, everything that felt so certain that I had planned for in my life was thrown up in the air and taken out of my control. I felt like a victim of circumstance. And when I think back to that time, I like to actually process it through the lens of an artist named Chino Otsuka, who is a Photoshop artist. artist, and she takes these pictures of herself as a child and she photoshops herself as an adult into the same photo with this theme of what I wish I knew back then. And what I wish I had known back then on the Gulf Coast of Mississippi was the work of Sonia Lyubomirsky, who is a preeminent positive psychology researcher, who says that if you tell me how much money you make, where you live, and how many pets you have, I can accurately predict your happiness levels by exactly 10%. Because it turns out that the other 90% of your happiness is due to your genes and your perception of the world, which means that if there were 100 people on this webinar, and I know there's far more than that, but if there were 100 of us, 90 of them would have extraordinarily different outtakes from what we talk about here today. Even though you listen to the same speaker at the same time with the same presentation, each one of us comes to this moment with different backgrounds, different experiences, different stories, different types of breakfast you ate. All of these factors impact the way that we perceive a situation and what we remember and what we do with the information, which means to me that 90% of our happiness is actually up to us. Even though we feel like sometimes the negative things are permanent and pervasive, we actually have capacity to change the way we see the world and what we do with it. And so one more brain physiology slide for you here today that is so important. This is a research study that was completed by Peter Salovey, who's the current president of Yale University. And he found that when we're able to rethink the region of our brain where we process stress, that it can actually change the physiological outcomes on our body and our outcomes for performance and long-term happiness as well. So what this means is that when you answer that stress feels like a threat, and the truth is that all of us sometimes feel threatened by stress, and sometimes it feels like a challenge. There's not a one size fits all there. But when we feel like there is a threat to our system, we use our amygdala, this rear central region of our brain that's responsible for big emotions. And that is why sometimes when things happen that you feel so emotional about them, because our emotion center is using that processing portion of our brain to deal with it. It's that fight or flight sensation. But it turns out there's another region of our brain that we can use to process stress, and that is the prefrontal cortex, known as the logic center, and that's where we process challenges. And so if we can reroute stress in the moment from being in our amygdala to our prefrontal cortex, we can actually decrease our stress by up to 23%. That's 23% less headaches, backaches, lack of sleep, the tiredness, the irritability, all those things that come along with stress that are negative impacts for our body. And so let's talk about how we do this in a very practical way. Let's say I have 3 young children at home. I know some of you have children as well. One day there was a Lego piece left out in the middle of our living room. I step on it. And if those of you who have never stepped on a Lego piece before in your life, it could be a rare form of torture. It hurts really bad. And so for me in that moment, it felt like that threat. It was this danger is in my environment and it is attacking me and it hurts. So I tried to reroute that threat into a challenge by doing one tiny micro habit change. Now this could be trying to grin and bear it for a second, trying to laugh at myself for doing these experiments. It could be trying to say something I'm grateful for, like, wow, I found that piece the kids were looking for so long. Doesn't matter what it is. As long as you reroute it, you can decrease your overall pain from that moment by 23%, which is phenomenal. Now, that's a silly example, but I think there's some really cool ways that we can begin to use this principle in bigger ways in our life, and specifically to bring more fearless positivity into our path. And one of the ways that I've been doing this throughout the pandemic is with this chart. It's one of my favorite charts because when I think about the opportunity we have, that chance to change, the pandemic gives us this moment where we kind of hold our breath and we think, who am I going to be? What are my goals? What am I going to do going forward? And it's very hard to think forward when you're in panic mode. But when I heard about the pandemic, I remember it was March 11th of 2020 when the World Health Organization declared that it was a global pandemic. And turns out that was my 40th birthday, which was a present that I never expected on that day, and certainly not one that I welcomed. But I remember I was out of the country that day when we heard, and I firmly and and immediately went into the fear zone. I admit to panic buying toilet paper just one time. I admit it. I definitely was irritated. I was stressed out. I was trying to figure out logistics of getting back into the country, what was going to happen with work, with the children's school, with our finances and career, and all of these things just were a source of fear. I remember because I had just named my company Fearless Positivity, I felt like a bit of a fraud at that point because I was so filled with fear and I didn't know what to do with it. But as time has gone on, some of these strategies I've learned from the field of positive psychology have been so instrumental in helping me to move along this continuum towards learning and growth. And on any given day over the last year and a half, I slide up and down this continuum. It's not like you arrive at some final point and suddenly you're permanently growing. Where I landed on this chart had everything to do with social support. It was those days when I was firmly rooted in fear that I had people around me who would say, Amy, it's going to be okay, or we can do this together, or we're all in this together. And that's what helped me move into the learning zone and kind of process this narrative of what I wanted to walk out of this with. But I want you to think about where you're at on this chart today, in this moment. Where are you, and who are you going to be as we emerge from COVID-19? And what do you want to look like? What is your world looking like? As we think about this, we talk about growth mindset. Again, when we think about that image of the fMRI of the brain and what's happening in a physiological level when we change the nature of how we're processing information. We know that we are tempted to have a fixed mindset, to think that things are set and there's nothing we can do about them. But then we remember that we have the capacity to change and that our potential is infinite. So how do we process growth mindset? I think I like to think about some of the limiting beliefs, those kind of negative thoughts that buzz in the back of your brain that kind of hold you back from achieving the goals that you've wanted to set out, but felt like maybe weren't possible to actually accomplish. Some of these things for you, I don't know if you've ever said some of these things. I'm just not good at math. I'm not creative. I'm not artistic. I'm not outgoing. I'm not good at sticking with things. I've tried this. It doesn't work. These are limiting beliefs. And, it's helpful to identify them because when we call them out, it takes away part of their power. But there's something else we can start to do here too. And this is what I call fact checking our fears. So when you think about some of the challenges that you might face in accomplishing those 3 goals that you set out at the beginning, when you rewrote them as fearlessly positive goals, what are some of the things holding you back from achieving them? Is it time, money, talent, your knowledge? Maybe you have a knowledge cliff. You don't know enough and you need to learn more. You don't have enough support to accomplish it. You don't have the resources you need. What are those challenges for you? And then let's think about if there's another way that you can look at your challenges. So I want you to take a moment, if you have that scratch sheet of paper in front of you, I want you to draw a picture of a mug. I want you to draw the most creative mug that you can think of. And when you have it, I don't know if you can share it in the chat or not. You're welcome to share it if you can. If not, you can just enjoy it for your own self. I can't see it here while I'm presenting. So I will just share with you some of the most creative mugs that I've come across in the past. Here's a couple that have been drawn in real life sessions. And there are so many very cool mugs. I did this exercise last week with an in-person conference, and somebody drew a mug that was a 3D printer that could literally 3D print anything that you wanted to fill it with. I was blown away by that. It was so cool. I've seen a lot of really awesome mugs. But what's interesting here is that every single one of these mugs is drawn from the same perspective. They're all drawn from the same side angle. Maybe 2 of them, 3 of them there, you can see kind of a slight angle where you can see the liquid inside of the mug. Depends on your artistic skill level here, right? But what I find interesting is that nobody draws their mug looking at it from the bottom, and almost nobody draws their mug looking at it from the top. And that's because even when we're told to be as creative as possible, we still operate within this framework of what we think is expected of us, right? And so what we're trying to do here with growth mindset, with your optimism mindset, is to begin to look for other possibilities, other perspectives by thinking of the world through a different lens. So look at this image here. I wonder how many of you can see the circle, the white circle in the top left corner, or the white triangle in the top right corner, or the white sphere, the bottom left, or the rectangle, the white rectangle in the bottom right. For those of you who can easily see that, what's so interesting to me is that none of those things actually exist. What we're seeing is a negative reflection of that, where we have just enough information in our visual field to make us think we're seeing things, but it's something that isn't actually there. Now, my dad was a neuroscientist growing up, so he always played these tricks on me. So you'll have to forgive me. This is part of my childhood. But I find that these are so interesting because these optical illusions help us to fill in the gaps of information, but sometimes they can lead us astray. This is the heart of what happens when we have fake news, right? We think we have enough information, but we're extrapolating to form a picture that makes sense to us. But those things may or may not actually be real. So let's do the same thing with the challenges you're facing towards reaching your fearlessly positive goals. I want you to look at some of the challenges maybe that you wrote down, some of the things like resources, time, energy, knowledge that you are lacking to achieve your goals. And beside each one of them, I want you to write, was this a fact? Is this for real? It is what it is. Or is this the fear? I might not have enough energy. I might not have enough knowledge. So write fact or fear beside each one. So as you're assessing the road, this is what it might look like. You might think, oh, I don't have enough time. Maybe the distance is too far, or I don't have enough energy. So the first two could be a fact. Time and distance are very finite, but energy is much more infinite, right? So this is a fear that you might run out, but there's things we can do about that when we recognize that it's just a fear, that we can begin to strategically think about our path forward. So no matter what those things are, I want you to think about adversity, not as a stumbling block, but as a stepping stone to greatness. Recognizing a fear is an opportunity to do something about it so that you can tangibly start working towards achieving your goals. Which leads us into part 3. This is all about how do you set up some habits that can help you support creating more fearless positivity for yourself and those people around you. Now, this image, though it looks like an image of a blinding snowstorm, is actually a picture of a human brain. And yes, I'm only partially tricking you here with an optical illusion. But what you see here is roughly 11 million snowflakes flying at you into the camera lens, right? We can look at this image and it's really easy to see all of the potential problems that a blinding snowstorm can create. Accidents, delays, frustration, just the coldness that we don't like, a little bit of irritability. It's easy to see all of that. But when you're looking at this and you see 11 million bits of snowflakes, what's interesting is that the human brain is a single processor, which means that you can only see 40 bits of information at any given time, which means that if you are scanning this picture for 40 snowflakes, and your brain finds all the stresses and the hassles and the complaints in this picture, you literally have no brain power left with which to process the things that are meaningful, the things that are new creative options or opportunities, the things that might move you forward. And so what we're trying to do with creating a more optimistic mindset is build some habits that teach us how to scan this environment, not just for all the positive snowflakes, but to be able to see the positive and the negative, and then give a slight priority to the positive, knowing that a positive mindset is the single greatest advantage you have in terms of reaching your goals and to rising above to be your most high potential and successful self. And the way that we do these is so deceptively simple. So no matter where I've been, I've given this talk in more than 50 different countries. I've taught these same 5 skills to the NBA, the Federal Reserve, the White House, farmers in Zimbabwe who are experiencing 10,000% inflation, children in Soweto, South Africa, kids at St. Jude's Hospital who are often the ones facing uncertainty, but wind up comforting their parents in the midst of some really difficult circumstances. And what we find is that these 5 habits have been found to be the fastest, most effective way to create a new habit to train the neural pathways in your brain to see some new snowflakes. And the beauty is that 4 of the 5 of these habits can be done in less than 2 minutes. I'll let you guess which one is the one that can't be done in under 2 minutes. But I call them the J game. It is a short mnemonic to remember journaling, gratitude, A for acts of kindness, M for meditation, E for exercise. And really briefly, I'm going to walk you through how you can do each one of these in a very short time frame. And I want you to be thinking about which of these 5 you might want to pick up in your life for the next 21 days. Picking one and one that you're not currently doing. And then I'm going to put up a poll at the end to find out which one you want to try out for the next 21 days as a personal life experiment. Consider it a test to see whether what Amy was saying was actually true, and put it to a scientific test. I would love to hear how these go for you. So J for journaling. 2 minutes, writing down what one meaningful moment you've had in the last 24 hours of your life. You can do it right now while you're listening to me if you want to get a jump start on day one. And what I want you to do is just reflect on, who you were with, what you were doing, why this moment was meaningful. It can be bullet points, it can be a paragraph, it could be 2 sentences. But the reason why journaling is so impactful from a psychology perspective is that your brain can't tell the difference between visualization and actual experience. So as you start writing about this, your brain is slowing down and processing that moment, and it's reliving the most meaningful moment in the last 24 hours, which not only doubles its benefit, but something else incredible starts happening. If you do this for 21 days in a row, your brain begins to connect the dots, and all of a sudden you see this trajectory of meaning and purpose you might have missed altogether. I actually had the opportunity to test this out with the National MS Society. We asked a group of individuals living with chronic pain to journal for just 21 days, just like I'm challenging you to do here. And what we found was that after 6 weeks, individuals reported being able to drop their pain medication by up to 50%. 6 months later, there was still a 30% lower relapse rate just from a 21-day experiment. These sound like tips or tricks, but these are the building blocks of creating positive change in our lives. So that's journaling. The second habit, gratitude. Many of you have heard of this. You've tried it. November tends to be social media. Everyone does a gratitude challenge. But to give you my specific twist on this, what I want you to do for 21 days for 2 minutes is to write down 3 very specific things that you're grateful for. And I am very clear about the specificity because I tried this out at American Express. And what we found was that when we didn't tell people to be specific, they were writing down the same 3 things every day. I'm thankful for my family, my dog, and my job. And their brain had to do no scanning of the environment to find those new snowflakes. But we're trying to build a new muscle here. So I'm going to challenge you that once you write down a gratitude, you can't use the same one again for the next 21 days. So get really specific so it's actually easier for you in the long run. Martin Seligman, who's the father of positive psychology, calls gratitude the single fastest way to trump your genes. If you're one of those individuals who's predisposed towards being a bit more pessimistic, or who's had a life that has enough challenges that's caused you to begin to doubt that positivity actually plays an important role. So for you, gratitude is a way of retraining those neural pathways in your brain and teaching your brain to scan for some different snowflakes. The third habit, A for acts of kindness. For this, I have a very specific exercise because I think there's a lot of ways that you can show acts of kindness, but my specific brand of trying this out is to make a list on a sheet of paper from 1 to 21. And again, you can do this right now, right here with me if you want. And I want you to write down 21 people who come to mind. These could be friends, family, coworkers, neighbors, whoever it might be in your life. And just write all the way down from 1 to 21. And as you're getting through this list, I want you to go back to person number 1 on the list. And I want you to pull out your cell phone if you're not currently already on it. And I actually want you to send a text message to that person, thanking or praising them for something they've done recently, maybe just checking in and saying, hey, I was thinking about you. You might give the individual a little bit of context because I did this a few months ago with individuals again in person. And one of the people was a mother. She texted her son and said, hey, I just want to tell you I love you. And the son, so alarmed, texted back immediately, Mom, what's wrong? I guess she never texts him that she loves him because that seemed like a very alarming thing for her to say to him. So give it a little context. Say, hey, I'm doing this experiment. I was just thinking about you. You're number 1 on my list. And then on day 2, day 3, day 4, send another text message. I do this because I have people list 1 through 21 because what happens is that each day further on the list, your brain feels like it has to come up with who that person's going to be. And there's a decision fatigue that makes you feel like you may not stick with this habit. So when you have a 1 through 21 already listed out, all you have to do is the next morning, wake up, text that person on the list, check it off. You feel good, they feel good. You create this positive feedback loop. And as a result, you're broadening and deepening your social support network, which is the breadth and depth, the meaning of life, right? And particularly in the real estate field, we know that these networks are so crucial, not only to your success, but also to that personal sense of authenticity and connection. The fourth habit, meditation, it means a lot of different things to different people, but I just recommend taking 2 minutes to watch your breath go in and out. And this simple act of focusing for 2 minutes, I typically do this right when I get to the office before I ever jump into my inbox, or what I call the tyranny of the urgent. It's the phones and texts and alerts and messages and all these things I have to do for the day. Before any of that starts up, I focus for 2 minutes, single task focus, so that when I go back to multitasking, which I'm going to do shortly thereafter, I'm going to do so with a single-minded purpose. And when you do this, we find that individuals are 10% more accurate on basic math problems like addition and subtraction. They are happier overall throughout the day. They are more connected to their priorities, and they're more likely to accomplish them. And something else amazing is happening, that when you meditate, and you don't tell a single soul that you're trying to meditate, other people in your environment will pick up on the benefits of your meditation, even if you never told them. I had an individual at one of the big 4 accounting firms in a very high stress position say that she tried this out, and within 2 weeks, her coworkers started calling her Zen Courtney because they noticed such a big difference in her entire aura. So we find that if there's somebody that either you're living through a lot of stress right now, or there's someone on your team who's causing you a lot of stress, one of the fastest, best ways for you to create a change in them is for you to meditate, because it ripples out to them through something called the mirror neuron network, which means that just in the same way that you yawn and it causes me to yawn, our neurons actually mirror each other. We can see this in fMRI machines as well. And the same thing happens with meditation. It's incredibly powerful, just 2 minutes a day. The last habit, E for exercise, is a way to give the brain a cognitive boost. It creates these kind of constellations of positive habits in our lives. And yes, this is the only habit that takes longer than 2 minutes. I would say a minimum of 15 minutes, or your doctor would say 30 minutes, 60 minutes. But I include it in the J game because it is such an amazing starter drug for other types of positive behaviors. We find that people who exercise actually wind up with these positive constellations of habits. All of a sudden, they want to meditate, they want to journal, they want to do acts of kindness, and all because their brain records a win and a victory. And the earlier in the day that you're able to do this, the more you reap the benefits throughout the rest of your day. So that being said, I told you I was going to do this. I want you to think through which of these 5 habits that you might want to try for the next 21 days. And I'm going to put up our poll here so that you can vote on which of the 5 habits that you want to try. So I am going to pause there and give you a moment to respond about which of these 5 habits in the live poll that you want to try. Typically winds up that there's 1 or 2 that are more typical for a particular audience, but I love asking people to write this down, not only because we find that individuals who write down their intentions for the goals are 42% more likely to actually achieve them, but also because it gives you a way to publicly commit in front of your peers about something that you know that you want to do, why you want to do it, and it's something that you can check in with one another about. You could ask each other throughout this conference, hey, which one of these habits did you pick? And a week from now, you can say, hey, how is that going? I know you're a close-knit network, so check in with one another, be one another's support. I see some of the results coming in now. I see a lot of exercise and gratitude. Good for you. A couple more journaling and meditation. No acts of kindness yet, so hopefully somebody will take that on as well here. I'm going to pop back into my other screen while you're bringing in the voting to just see one more thought, and that is that these 5 habits, the JCAME, are not just great as an individual practice, but also as a team practice. So if your team or the individuals you work with could benefit from it, don't be afraid to pull them in, teach them what you've learned, ask them to commit to something, try out a challenge together. It makes it even more fun when you have other coworkers to join in. As you are attempting to accomplish this 21 days, don't be discouraged if you mess up on day 4 or 14. We are more empowered than we know. And it's all about getting back on the horse, not about the consistency, but really the ability to rise above disappointment, to keep going, to keep facing those challenges and not feeling like they're a threat. So as we close out here today, the last part of these tools for building up your fearless positivity is something I've hinted at this entire presentation. It's your community. When we think about who in your network, who's in your community, it's very easy on our online social networks that it circles up our friends for us. We can say who we want to follow first, but it might be an exercise that you want to jot down on a sheet of paper as well. And when I'm doing so, I often put myself at the center and I create a chart that looks like this, so thinking of my neighborhood, the school community, my friends from college, maybe my relatives that I haven't tapped into. And then I branch out and actually put those individuals' name down on paper. And without fail, it always amazes me how many people are in my community. That sometimes when I feel like I am on my own, it's because I've forgotten to reach out to all of the other beautiful people who I have relationships with that I might be able to help. See, we know that social support, of the 3 things we've talked about here today, social support is the single greatest predictor of long-term success and happiness. Social support is as predictive of how long you'll live as obesity, high blood pressure, and smoking combined. Social support is that breadth and depth and meaning in our life. It is the purpose driver, and it is also the thing that keeps us going. But in hard times, we know that we have this horrible propensity to disinvest in those moments where we need support the most. If you're one of those individuals going through a really hard time right now, this is my encouragement to you to reach out to those people in your social support network, whether online or offline, whether it's people who are at this conference today or other people in your life. And if you're one of those individuals who's feeling pretty good right now, I encourage you to be the person to reach out to others. We know that individuals who provide social support to others are 40% more likely to receive it in return. So be the one to reach out, be the one to take the initiative. More so than ever, this is crucial to creating a village and a community where we're all well together. And lastly, I want to talk about this idea of social scripts. When we talk about community, sometimes we follow these unwritten rules that are called social scripts, and we all follow them, whether we know it or not. And one of the most obvious social scripts I can think of is what happens when you walk into an elevator. Now, there's certain elevator protocol, right? We know that if there's one other person on the elevator and you walk into it, the protocol says, do not go stand right next to that person. You give them their space. You stand on the other side. We're all about social distancing these days. We also know that you should not act like Buddy in the movie Elf, where you hit all the different floors on the elevator panel for all the buttons to light up. We also know that you shouldn't jump in the elevator. That's a big no-no, right? You don't scream. You don't do anything like that that might scare other people. These are certain social scripts, and nobody had to explicitly teach you. They're not written anywhere. There's just certain rules that we follow. Well, the same thing happens in our environment, in our communities, and our organizations. We follow certain scripts without even realizing it, and some of them are negative scripts that hold us back. So one of the organizations I worked with out in California several years ago was a creative arts agency, and they had a room where they did all of their creative brainstorming in the basement level of their office building. But it wasn't the greatest room. This is what I imagined the room to look like on your screen here, but it was this dark, dank room. It actually had no windows in it, and everything was dark furniture, dark walls, dark everything. And so one day, one of the employees went in and he decided that he wanted to brighten up the room, and he asked his children to create this beautiful, colorful banner just to add a little levity to the room. And he went up and he hung it into the dungeon. And the next day, all of his coworkers were like, wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much. That's really fun. And it really makes me feel like I'm, more creative. So thank you for that. Everybody said that except for one person who went straight to the head of HR and all of a sudden was like, I can't think and focus in this room. I mean, what is this? It's like a kindergarten room with this art all over it. You've got to take it down. And shocked, the HR director dutifully went and he took down the piece of art because of the complaint. And the next day, there was such an uproar from the other employees that the CEO himself had to go back to the dungeon and hang up the art. The question is, why do we sometimes let that one squeaky wheel shape the environment for all of the rest of us, to bring down the culture because they didn't like it? Instead, we have to recognize that optimists make up for 2/3 of an environment, that the pessimists and the loud squeaky wheels are about 1/3, but 2/3 of the other individuals wield an incredible power to shape a positive culture. And the question is, when you think about who writes that script, it's you. You write the script. I want to encourage you today as we close out to be the one to lead with fearless positivity, to take the first step to reach out, to not be toxically positive, but to lead with that sense of purpose and trajectory that focuses on why we're living with fearless positivity, rising above for something else that matters more. Because we know that in our lives that fear is a powerful motivator, but hope is an even better one. So what will you do with your fearless positivity, with your vision, with your new mindset, with the habit that you're practicing for the next 21 days, and with the community around you as a support? What can you do to bring more fearless positivity to the world around us? I want to pause there and thank you so much for letting me get to speak into your world today, to be part of your fun kickoff. I hope you feel inspired and enthusiastic about your fall goals. Go do them. I want to hear all about them. If you want to share your story with me, I'd love to hear what's going on with your experiment, with your goals. My website is amyblankson.com, and I would love to stay in touch. So with that, I will turn it back to you, Steve. Thank you so much for letting me get to address all of you here today.
Well, that was just wonderful, Amy. Thank you so very much. And give us your email again so people can get in touch with you.
So the best way to get in touch with me is either my website, amyblankson.com, or my email is amyblankson@gmail.com. So there you have it.
I love it. And we do have a couple questions. We had a little issue with the Q&A, but they're fixing it by the next one. And so we're just double checking. I know one of the questions was, how can people help spread positivity to maybe a particular person or a coworker that may need an extra boost or may just not be positive? And we'll start with that. And also the Q&A should be on the right-hand side for the next thing. I know we're running a little over. We'll be real quick, but just so you people know. Or you can email Teresa McKee, teresa@nvrealtors.org with your questions in case we keep. Okay, the question, how can we help spread positivity to a particular person maybe?
So I have a really simple litmus test that I've been using for the last year, Steve. And it is just that when I ask, how are you doing? If they say okay or not great, I have committed to ask a follow-up question, because we know that people, when they say, how's it going? They'll say, oh, it's good, or it's fine. That's kind of the default answer. But if they go beyond the default to say not great, or, for me, it's a flag to say this is an opportunity to speak into their life. So there might be something going on, or there's a challenge that they're facing. So I just encourage you to tap into that bit of authenticity, really listen to one another, and to tune in when people are asking for help.
Oh, that's perfect. And is there a way to find our baseline happiness, to know if we need to work a little bit harder, or if we're coming at it from a little luckier wired position?
I don't know of a specific test to be honest, Steve, about your baseline. I think that we know ourselves pretty well from a self-knowledge perspective. But if you want to track along with it, there's some wonderful mood tracker apps that you can start today. It'll just say, happy face, sad face, neutral face, or maybe even give you a bigger range, and you can actually start tracking it over time to see whether or not you're trending upwards.
I love it. And I wondered if not taking ourselves so seriously as a comedian, sometimes people get offended and such, and maybe laughing at ourselves or giving permission to laugh at ourselves beyond comedy is realizing we're all human. We all make errors. Is that something that we need to note and just say, quit being so hard on ourselves? Or
I think we might need to add that to the J game. Listening to some jokes every day. I think that's a great idea.
I like it. I like it. Well, that would certainly help me. And thank you so very, very much, Amy. And we're going to tell people how to move on to the next event where they have a chance to win a copy of Amy's books and a couple of gift cards. And we really appreciate you starting it out so well. And at this point, everybody, you close out your screen and click on session 2, the secrets to embracing diversity, equity, and inclusion. And you got to be present to win. So stay tuned, and we'll see you in just a bit. Great job. Okay.
Ready to look for a house?
It's so fun to use Realtor.com.
It's so user-friendly, and they have so many photos.
Someone once asked me if I had ever looked at real estate just for fun, and I just assumed everyone did.
Realtor.com have this great 3D visuals.
You could walk through a house from 1,000 miles away.
We love using the map draw feature.
You can draw, and then it only shows you in that area. It's the best.
I love it. Realtor.com.
High five.